Our final panel is AI as a force multiplier, some executive insights. Will you please welcome to the stage to chair this panel, the chairman and the founder of SmartTech 24/7. He's also the Chief Strategy Officer for Forcepoint, and he's an advisor to the Irish government. It's Mr. Ronan Murphy, ladies and gentlemen. And on his panel, he has got Caroline Spillane, CEO of the Institute of Directors of Ireland, Tim Hynes, who is Senior Customer Security and AI Specialist with Google Cloud, Alistair Mills, Director of Sales and Engineering with Proofpoint, and Heather Hinton, the CISO of Sitecore. Round of applause for our final panel, folks. Thank you. Ronan, over to you.
First and foremost, thank you all for joining me on stage today. Obviously, AI has been a hot topic throughout the course of the day, and every cybersecurity conference I've attended over probably the last 12 months, AI has been the real key talking point. In fact, I think anyone who attended RSA earlier this year in San Francisco, they were literally all AI'd out by the end of it. But we are seeing now in real terms that it is becoming an incredible force multiplier. So what I'd like maybe to do just before I start is if you guys could just do a very quick introduction to yourself and moving along, just so the audience know who we've got up here.
Awesome. My name is Heather Hinton. I am the CISO at a company called Sitecore. We have a major office here in Dublin. I am Canadian. I mention that because I will reference that later on.
Okay.
Four-time CISO, been in security for far too long.
Okay.
Alistair Mills, I'm Director of Sales Engineering, but my background actually is deploying products within security companies before I then went the other side of the fence, but yeah.
Hi there, Caroline Spillane. I'm the Chief Executive of the Institute of Directors Ireland. We have about 3,500 members who are members of boards, senior business leaders, and in addition to that, I sit on a number of boards as a non-executive director.
Tim Hynes, I'm a customer engineer at Google Cloud in the UK, working around security and AI.
Excellent. Okay. So look, Heather, I'm going to start with you. In your experience, where are you seeing that organizations are getting real measurable value from AI in cybersecurity? And when we say real, I mean, beyond the hype of what we might hear from vendors, what are you seeing on the ground?
So you blew the question by adding measurable.
Yes.
I don't actually think that they're seeing measurable value, and I think that that's for a couple of reasons. I think that one, we don't actually have the baselines across the board that we can use to actually demonstrate that we do have value. I think that your marketing team will absolutely tell you that they're more effective, but it's not clear how that is translating, as we saw in the previous panel, to revenue, right? So, yay, they feel better. They're doing more. They might be happier, but is that actually measurable? It's not entirely clear to me. I think where this crowd really cares is, what is this doing for us from a cybersecurity point of view? Am I getting better at developing code? Is my test better? Am I better at dealing with my vulnerabilities? And again, I'm going to say there the answer is the jury is out, because there are too many companies out there that are carrying significant tech debt that they can't necessarily get rid of, and that AI isn't going to help them unless they start doing things like fundamentally rewriting their code. Now, if they rewrite their code, right? So if you listen to Jason Clinton, who's the CISO at Anthropic, his thing is C, C#, C++, they're all dead, get rid of them. Get AI to rewrite everything for you in Rust. Now, that's obviously going to give you a nice baseline, but that's the sort of thing that is getting in the way of us really being able to say, I moved the needle on my risk posture, on my vulnerability management, my patch management duration, my mean time to respond, here's how I drove the business. And until we get mature there, it's going to be very difficult for us to make that case.
Yeah, interesting answer. Tim, in your opinion, what should leaders be more worried about right now? Employees feeding sensitive information into external AI tools, or internal AI products and coding assistants expanding the attack surface for proprietary data and source code?
I think they're both incredibly powerful tools, and I think in lots of organizations, people are being encouraged to use them to try out new ideas, or to completely rework code bases or build new applications, as you talked about there. I think the way that we defend against both of those is kind of very different to me. And I think in the first case, a lot of the ways that we can defend against AI tools being used by our end users is a lot of the same sort of problems that we've been trying to defend against on endpoints for years anyway. So it comes down to using technologies like web proxies, zero trust technologies, endpoint defense tools and detection tools, having good detection engineering and things like this. Where the new AI coding type approach is much more of a problem that's been harder to get security hands around, I would say, over the years. And I think there have been some advances in the last couple of years, but it's really, I think generally organizations are on the back foot with it a little bit. And I think over the last couple of weeks or the last few months, we've definitely seen like lots of scary headlines, which in which open source packages have got malware in them or are having vulnerabilities discovered on a daily basis and are easy to attack. So I would say that the second one is definitely more of a worrying problem for people to deal with. I think the tools are out there to deal with it, but it's a case of moving quite quickly to try and get the processes in place to lock things down and protect ourselves.
Yeah, I think what we've heard from a lot of the speakers today is that sense of urgency right now is paramount with pretty much all CISOs and security departments. Caroline, you spend obviously a lot of time on boards. And in your experience, what should boards be watching and asking about and deciding over the next 12, 24 months when it comes to AI?
So a lot of, I think, what was talked about in the last panel, I would agree with, and I suppose the principal thing, if you think about the responsibilities of a board, number one, it's about strategy. So the board has got to determine what is the strategic value of any activities that it decides to embark on. And just purchasing a tool does not mean that you're adding value to the business. So strategy is the number one thing. And then aligned to that, of course, is risk. So boards really need to be thinking about what is the risk that is being brought into the business. How is, when I'm dealing with the management team, how is it being described, how is it being managed, etc. I think the other areas that boards need to really think about, and it depends on the sector that you're in, is compliance with legislation. So if you're sitting on a state board, for example, you need to be thinking about, my fundamental legislation here, and then other, maybe the code of practice for governing state bodies or other laws and regulations, and obviously the Companies Act. And I suppose the other thing is allied to that is, for example, NIS2, that now is a game changer because it has become, a director level accountability. So that's another area I would call out. I suppose the other thing I would say about boards and considering activities is, you've got to be really curious when the management team is coming with something, and you got to be asking questions around, do we have the resourcing to follow all of this through? And, I absolutely agree with the last panel talking about, how they need to report into the board. Well, the board needs to be alive to the questions to be asking people who have senior leadership responsibilities in particular areas. Cyber and AI would be other areas, specific ones to call out in this conversation. I suppose, look, I don't want to, I'll develop this further, but the other major area, of course, for a board is, you're the ones who are responsible for defining the accountability and setting up the guardrails. So you're there to determine the policies and make sure that they get cascaded down through the organization. So being really clear about what those policies are and how they are being implemented, and then to the degree that you can, how they can be monitored, and that you're getting the level of feedback and information that you need to be able to take a change in direction or handle a course of action. And obviously accountability. Boards, there are things that boards are responsible for doing. They cannot delegate them to committees or to the management team. Boards need to determine that in respect of any of the decisions that they make to either purchase tools or go down strategic directions.
Yeah, great answer. I'm curious. when you speak to any of the folks in GRC or board members, they're very cognizant of GDPR and they're very cognizant of NIST and ISO standards and so forth. Are you seeing many of them raising their hand about the EU AI Act out of curiosity?
Yeah, I think people are very, very alive to this, and very much the same as conversed at the last panel. I think Kate had said that boards aren't very interested in cybersecurity, for example. I think they are. I think it all has to be packaged up in a language that actually has meaning for the board. But I most definitely feel that there's a good level of awareness. And we've done a lot of director sentiment monitors, and we certainly know that boards and directors are aware of this. Whether they have deep awareness or not of the actual implications, I think there's a responsibility in some ways on the directors themselves to make sure that they are tooled up on this, but also the management team to be bringing them information. So that's really one last point I'd make, is that boards really need to be thinking about training and development, not only through how that is happening throughout the organisation, but for themselves as well.
Yeah, but someone keep me honest, but I believe the EU AI Act is just as punitive as GDPR. 4% of revenue should you breach the highest.
Yeah, where you are found to be, there's a major failure, and
yes.
Especially if the board was aware of this.
Yes.
Then there is a director level accountability at that stage.
Excellent. Alistair, looking ahead, what does a mature AI-enabled cybersecurity function look like, in your opinion?
Well, I think for me, the change in AI adoption at the moment represents a lot of opportunity for the SOC, because ultimately the SOC itself, if we think about how they're operating today, a lot of, coming from the vendor side myself, right, a lot of vendor work is put onto the SOC to integrate those speeds and feeds into the SIM, into whatever platform they are using for incident response and triage. And actually, when we look at the AI-enabled SOC, AI is, what's it really good at? It's good at taking vast amounts of data and condensing insights and things from it. That's one of the good use cases. That's definitely a big pain point we know about for the SOC. So I think that's first and foremost. I think the other one, though, is at a vendor and a tool level, I'm very interested in things like how maybe MCP and other standards are coming together to bring cohesion from different vendor tool sets. So, instead of then an operator having to go and build and be perhaps an expert in vendor A versus vendor B to get them to talk together, you can get interoperability. We're already seeing this between certain vendor products. We have partnerships with other organizations where we've got that. And therefore, as we evolve to maybe agents from each of these vendors coming together, the agents can then share and work together to share those insights, rather than necessarily expecting some analyst to know every single product that there is within any organization, or as they move, their time to value is increased a lot quicker.
Can I jump in on that
yes,
one?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so speaking as an operating CISO, I want to say that there's two things that are really critically important for me. One is my supply chain and my resilience, because it's the supply chain risk that's probably going to kill me.
Yes.
And then the other one is just that because I'm in a technology firm, we are developing software, it's making sure that my development cycle from design all the way out to operations is resilient enough to be able to deal with the rate and pace. I don't know if anybody here is taking stock, but we're now seeing critical 0 days, multiple a week. So I don't have data for this year, but in 2025, I had 20 active critical 0 days over the year. 11 of them were in fourth quarter. And that is only accelerating. So a really, truly AI-aware, AI-resilient firm is going to be one where you are able to respond to these things in real time, because, and in fact, in AI time. You're not going to have time to do this in human time. So to your point about the tools working together, you have to be leveraging the tools to get better at this, but you've got to have the basics. As we've talked about in almost every panel so far, if you don't have the basics and the fundamentals in place, you're not going to get the rest of it done.
Yeah, that's a great point. Tim, you are in an interesting position insofar as you guys are not only a frontier model provider, as well as one of the biggest companies in the world, but now obviously one of the global leading cybersecurity companies as well. And I guess the question is, what's your perspective to the statement that organisations may be moving too quickly on AI adoption and not quickly enough on managing the risks? There's a lot in that question.
Yeah, I think we see the success stories from certain companies, right, where they develop AI applications, whether they're internal facing or external facing, and they see massive improvements in efficiency or in profit spiking and things like that. And I think that drives technology leaders to push for more use of those technologies. And I think security leaders, as we said earlier, are on the back foot a little bit. And obviously, we're trying to deal with the millions of problems that they already had, and then we've introduced a bunch of new problems as well. So prioritizing that is quite hard. I think ultimately, as like cybersecurity as was said in the last panel, it's like it's delivering to the business to try and keep the business safe and to keep the business operating at speed. And if the business can't operate at speed and can't compete with its peers in the industry, then ultimately it's not going to be a successful business over time. So we do need to encourage that use of technology, whether it's AI or whatever the technology is, to try and keep us ahead of our peers. I think we're probably, I always think we're at a kind of a good point because we're kind of at the entry point of AI technology. Obviously it's been used in various forms over the years, but I think we're at the entry point where it's starting to really explode and we're starting to see more and more use cases. I think companies like ours, we're probably a bit ahead of that because we've got the Frontier Lab and all that kind of stuff. But I think now we've got a good opportunity to be able to set the guardrails and the policies and procedures around that, and probably in a way that we haven't really had the chance to do before. But we have to strike while the iron's hot, right? Because we've only got a short time to be able to do that, and we've got to do that while we're moving as well. So I think it is a little dangerous. It is a little scary. Whether it's dangerous depends on whether you get those guardrails in place and things like that. But I think it's an opportunity that most companies can't really afford to hold up on and wait for too long on.
Yeah, it's a good point. Open to all four of you guys. From an executive perspective, what does effective AI governance actually look like in practice, in your opinion?
Happy to jump in. I guess first and foremost, I would say kind of disciplined adoption and lifecycle management. I think, again, as we said on the last panel, this is another technology. It's the next wave of technology adoption. And so there's a lot of standards that we can already have, hopefully, in our governance that we can apply to it. But when I think about some of the specific challenges I'm either seeing or I've seen, again, successes of, sounds silly, but again, I think it was mentioned earlier, what is the definition and use case for that organization, right? What's the business value of what we're trying to achieve, rather than just taking a tool and throwing it out into the wild? And I'm not saying, we can't do innovation. We need to maybe have the right sandboxes to have that opportunity. But having clear business justification on why we're investing in that tool and what we expect to get out of it as an ROI is key. I think second to that is thinking about responsibilities and accountability. A lot of the conversations I have, AI feels like everybody's opportunity and nobody's responsibility.
Yeah.
And that needs to shift. So having clear guidelines on who's accountable for what models, for what legal processes, for what vendors are or aren't approved, third-party assessments across those stacks, I think is also really key. And I think once you get those, then you can start moving to and looking at the technology, because whilst we have a lot of existing tools that probably cover some of the basics, AI is nuanced. We need to have guardrails that are close to, if we're thinking of deploying agents within our organizations, how are we going to be able to see what they're doing, protect against it and block if they start doing inappropriate things, but also just as important, how are we going to get the logging and the kind of audit trail, so if something does go wrong, we can actually go back and see what happened. So I think there's a number of things to think of, but thinking about how we balance that speed versus safety is one of the key issues in any governance.
Would any of you guys like to add to that?
I'm going to jump in with pick your battles.
Yes.
Because there are some battles in terms of AI deployment that probably just aren't worth having, and there are some where you really want to lie down on the tracks in front of the train, right? You don't want to allow people to go and put in fully autonomous agents without any sort of oversight or governance or awareness of what's going on, right? There's some stuff that is just flat out too dangerous, and then there's other stuff where it's really not going to be.
So how many of those battles can you fight? Because if inherently cybersecurity has been seen as a blocker to business, right? In many cases.
Yep.
And the bigger a company, you get multiple stakeholders across different divisions who all have their own interest at heart in terms of furthering their own department. I'm curious, do you have a view on?
So this is where AI is a fantastic opportunity for security leaders, because what we get to do with this is use this to figure out who are we going to partner with. So it's no longer just security saying no. I've got legal in the boat with me saying no. I've got the head of marketing going, oh my God, look at all of the bad things that can happen. I really want my team to be more effective, but not at that price. And so it's an amazing opportunity to actually build the connections with the stakeholders and the rest of the business, so that you're not the one leading with no. They're the ones leading with no. And when you do it like that, then you can actually have the battles you need to have. If you're going to go it alone, that train's going to roll right over you.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. A lot of people are skeptical about the types of AI attacks we're seeing now, and they're saying, we're not seeing these full autonomous AI attacks yet. But I think the statistics in the industry clearly paint a picture that cybercrime is growing at an exponential rate. What would your view be to someone who says, look, the vast majority of attacks are just still phishing emails. This isn't a horror story that we're expecting.
I think we're seeing case studies already of autonomous attacks, right? So there was one that Anthropic published at the end of last year around like an agent-based attack, and it showed the full kind of attack process and showed how quickly it was able to get from the start to the end of that chain. So I think there is a lot of hype for sure, and probably a lot of the attacks are still being carried out by these threat actors that we heard about earlier today. They're mostly human operators, but there are definitely an increasing number of these evidenced AI attacks, and I think that is growing and growing. So.
Well, and remember, attacks are a multi-chain, right? It's not just one thing. There are multiple steps in the kill chain. And that first step, it might still be phishing, and it might remain phishing.
Yes.
But, once you're in, now the AI can be far more effective, far faster.
Yeah.
So, yes, phishing it's not something we're ever going to get away from, but we can't just say we're protected against phishing, therefore we're good.
If I could add, a simple thing, but it's so highly effective, is examples of where things have happened in reality. So, we've all been at conferences where you've had somebody who has given the description of what happens when a cyber attack has happened. And, you're walking in that morning, nobody can use anything. In fact, I was at a conference about a year ago where a person was talking about the fact that they were so lucky. They had printed out, and it was in the back boot of their car, a list of the phone numbers of their colleagues. If they hadn't had that, they would have had a tremendous difficulty. So what I'm getting on to say is that really bringing that to life, particularly from a board perspective, can be enormously powerful, because it can translate the, what if this happened into, well, look at this happened, this was a case, or this is a simulation, and that can be enormously effective.
That's a really good point. The man himself is here, so can I ask you before we wrap up, for each of you to give me, one key takeaway from the day, or from your view or perspective of AI as it moves forward throughout 2026?
All right, so I did promise to reference being Canadian. So
Yes.
I grew up knowing that you did not skate to where the puck is.
Soon to be American.
No.
Okay.
That one's not going to. You skate to where the puck is going.
Yeah.
If you are planning for where AI is today, you are too late. You've lost. You have to be looking at where is it. And not that we know where it's going to be in 6 months, but you've got to put your imaginary thinking cap on and really be looking at what is it going to do next, and how am I protecting against where it is going?
I think in reference to AI, I think again we've been through technology shifts before. I love the quote before. Every 5 years there's we're near disaster. This is a technology. Yes, it's nuanced. Yes, it's powerful. Yes, there's a lot of things that could go good and bad with it. But ultimately, stay away from the hype and get back to the basics of how can we consume, adopt, and do that appropriately, and then move forward within those.
Yeah, I think, what can wait is perfection, but what can't wait is governance and oversight. So I would say pick 2 or 3 maybe strategic plays, and also elevate cyber readiness and intelligence to a board level competence, and then go and make a move.
I think it was talked about in the first session of the day about getting the fundamentals right, and I think there are certain things. I'm going to give you 3 examples of things which I think have been kind of put on the back burner by a lot of organisations over the years. So like having a CMDB and knowing where all your assets are, having them catalogued well. Like I think there's not many organisations that could say they have 100% perfect CMDB. A vulnerability management program that can stand up to operating at speed, because that's going to be required, and data classification. So AI is going to have access to all of our data, like hopefully in a siloed way, depending on the agent that's accessing it, but that's going to be a requirement for it to add value to our business. And data classification, cataloging, and then being able to use DLP and things like that on top of that, and provide identity around that is going to be really critical. So going back to those fundamentals and revisiting them, I think.
Will acts such as HIPAA and frameworks like PCI DSS change significantly, do you think, to mitigate specific AI security problems?
That's a really good question, because the data aggregation is fundamentally different now than it used to be.
Okay, very good. Another one. We run an AI security team at a major insurance company. I'm curious, for a Fortune 500 company, what would you say is the highest AI security priority?
I mean, for me, I work for the email security company. So, again, when we talked about the AI risks and things we've seen, I think, again, it's, think about AI in our businesses. It's helping our employees go quicker, faster, through those agents. That's what we certainly on the email side of things are seeing through the threat actors. It's helping them go quicker, faster. Look to last year, CoGUI was one of the biggest threat phishing campaigns that we saw in our history. Over 150 million messages kind of in a week, and that was in very good Japanese. That's not typically a language that's targeted, so you can probably guess and infer that AI has been used in some level there. But again, I think that's a scale issue. I think there's a lot more complexities of AI threats we'll see as well.
As a Gmail user, I'm delighted that you're catching every single phishing attempt as Gaeilge. None of them are getting through. Ladies and gentlemen, just a round of applause again for our panel of Caroline Spillane, Tim Hynes, Alistair Mills, and Heather Hinton. We'll let you take your leave of the stage. Ronan, it's over to you.
Cheers, great answers. Thank you.